I grew up in the chocolate business. I just have felt from day one that it was my destiny. You can go back to my mother's scrapbooks of me and from first grade, what do you want to be when you grow up? It says candy maker. I don't know why. This is not a tech startup AI business where you can make $1 billion with it. You have to be here every single day. You get about 4 days of vacation a year. You have to deal with engineering and human resources and people and every extremely, crazy raw material issues. We're dealing with a chocolate crisis right now. Like, nothing about the business is, I would say, when it runs smooth, it's by accident because, chaos is normal for the chocolate industry, which is why I think what attracts me the most about it. But, and that's why the business is shrinking. It's really hard for people to get into the business in confectionery in general. But I just love it. I wouldn't do it any other way.
I'm Mark Cook, president of Windfall Partners. We get leaders unstuck and thriving with their teams. After turnarounds as chief executive, the largest ever studies of award-winning leaders, a New York Times bestseller, and 5-star keynotes. I've coached 4,000 client wins at top brands. My Bold Encounters is an advanced system for leading. First, powerful steps on a path forward. Second, problem-solving skills that beat obstacles fast. Now, lead with Bold Encounters today.
Welcome to Bold Encounters. This is a fun one. We have Dan Abel Jr., who has the title we all want on our business card, Chief Chocolate Officer. How are you, Dan?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. I want to introduce you a little bit more because it's fun. So not only have you won the best confection of the year many times, but your father, Dan, that you took over for, he founded this business but quickly grew it by purchasing a 350-year-old Paris candy maker that was confectioner to the King Louis XIV. That's unbelievable. Tell me how that happened.
It's amazing. Bissinger's started in 1600 in Paris, France, and it was actually in 1668 they were appointed the confectioner to the empire by the king. So we don't exactly know the first day they started operating, but we think 1668 is a good enough time to start. It's over 350 years. It could have been 1650. It could have been 1667. So we start the history in 1668, which is just mind-blowing.
Mind-blowing. And what a mind-blowing place to start making chocolate, the place of food.
Yeah, because it wasn't until the mid-1800s, in 1845, where they moved the family and the company to the United States, where actually you can go in and shop and buy Bissinger's products as a customer. It was truly reserved for royalty and only served to the royal family and their guests at the palace before then.
That's crazy. And not to mention that if your great-great-grandchildren keep leading this for you, they still won't double the age of the company.
Oh, I know. I always feel like we're just the guardians for the next chapter of Bissinger's. Whether we have no plans of getting out of or selling this business. So hopefully we're in it for the next 50 or 60 years, which doesn't even make a dent. For example, in the company moved to St. Louis, which is where headquartered today, in 1927. So we're coming up to, in 2 short years from now, the 100-year anniversary of the company being in St. Louis. But that's not even a third of its history. It's by that time it's going to be over 360 years old. So it's amazing how Bissinger's has been around longer than the United States. Bissinger's has been around longer than almost anything, and we feel that privilege as we represent and make the product today.
My gosh, that's a riot. I grew up in my early career locating stores as I was going through grad school, locating stores. I'd learned how to do that in undergraduate, and also doing grand openings for over 100 stores, 120-ish stores. Wore a record-winning set of stores. It was Franklin Covey, the day planners that people used to use before the smartphone. And so the other thing I did where there were a lot of locations is we published a magazine. I begged for 9 months. I said, our organization needs to publish a magazine. So I published a magazine called Priorities, and we had to get it into newsstands, and we got into 2,000 newsstands. You guys have done some amazing things distribution wise that we're going to talk about later, as far as just how an individual or a little company or a medium-sized company like yourself can increase distribution. But when you won your award, it was associated with 8,000 Starbucks and who knows however many more locations that chocolate was being sold. It's Bissingers everywhere, isn't it?
We hope. We want to keep it that way.
Right next to the cereal boxes in the grocery store. Yeah.
I always say, everything's handmade, so we can't fill every grocery cart in America, but we're gonna do as much as we can.
Okay, so you brought it from France. Anyone selling Bissingers anymore in France?
No, we talked about that recently. So we've been, direct to consumer. There's been a wave in the last 6 years with COVID and the shift of retail and the shift of direct to consumer, and it's been what we thought the brand and the company would be when we bought it in 2019 was not the case because of a pandemic, but as Wholesale is really starting to come back very strong, we said, we just need to get into one department store, and I don't even care if they buy the product. We'll just send it to them if just so we could say that we're in France again. And every year we just write that down as like on a to-do list, but it hasn't happened yet.
Just a little duty free in that strange store off to the side of the airport, right?
In France, so just send it to them, like whatever it takes. And if they order again, then that's great. But I want to be back in France, so it's on our list. But somehow lower hanging fruit always takes over.
Yeah, one of the other reasons I wanted to have you on is my day job's target market is a Crossroads CEO that's taking over for parents. So I feel like I know a little bit about what your work is like. But what I found in my day job and my work is that it is not as easy as all the envious people think to take over for a parent.
I would agree.
Is that true?
I would agree.
But I think it's such a great and fertile ground to discover and look around what it means to be someone who wants to do well for their boss, and someone who wants to do well for customers in spite of a difficult boss or a great boss. That it's just an interesting place to draw analogies that not a lot of people can present. So I want to talk a little bit about those things. But I want to go back to start really quickly. You have an interesting childhood. The rest of us didn't grow up with Willy Wonka as our parent. So tell us about your early childhood working for the modern Willy Wonka.
At the time, the business was really small, and the business and the family were, it was almost like it was one entity. My parents both worked. We had one store at the time. My parents both worked there. The candy kitchen was connected to the retail store. My dad worked on Saturdays until noon, so sometimes we would just go down to the store and hang out and try to do something. But it was really just to be with the family, be with your dad, and I loved it from too young of an age. Like I wanted to be in the business at 6 years old, and my parents were like, hold on. But we all got into the business, even through high school and college. And I went away to Florida for college, but I would fly home for Valentine's week. And all my professors knew, like, Dan won't be here Valentine's week because we make a lot of fresh dipped chocolate covered strawberries in a very small amount of time. And it's all hands on deck. And I remember, there was a time in high school where my dad called and said, it's my sister's school, and he says, I have to pull Christina out for 2 days, and the principal called and said, that's, we're not going to allow that, and he said, how do you think this tuition gets paid? Yeah. And he said, this is what we do. This is our family, because the family and the business is there. It's almost no separation. I think more people know me for the business than me. It's Dan with Bissingers or Dan with chocolate, and they know me as our company more than the fact that I like to play golf. Like, you know what I mean? Like they know more about the business than the person, and that's how it is. Luckily I've been, if media comes out at the holidays, I've walked into stores before and people know me, locally because of the business, that more than socially so.
Yeah. Well, when you're the steward of Louis XIV's sweet tooth, you've got to be known. So it's hard to compete with. So you're growing up in this environment. Thank goodness the business was not a business that sorted paper clips or something tedious and boring. And so oh shoot, you have to go work at a candy factory, and we all get our violins out. So we see that would be fun, but it's also tough. The other interesting thing about that era, though, is that you're not the oldest. You're second. Tell me about that, and then tell me about your dad, what he named his original company and why.
Yeah, so I have an older sister and a younger brother. My dad apprenticed for years as a candy maker, and this is kind of how he got his start. He was from St. Louis. He went away to college in Ohio, and he kind of started as a part-time job on a loading dock and made it up to become their vice president of this big candy company. And at the time, they kind of gave him the world because he was working hard. He was working there after college, 5, 6, 7 days a week, and they really liked his work ethic. But and I never thought about this until recently. They gave him benefits. They gave him a salary. They gave him everything a vice president at the time would have received, and he threw it all away and said, no, I'm going to go do my own thing, spend every penny I have opening my own shop back at home in St. Louis. And, that's a tough, and I think we were told the story so many times about how the company started and our childhood, that entrepreneurial, take educated risks because you're passionate about doing what you're doing, was just kind of ingrained in what we did. We didn't really know any other way. And that was, and sometimes we take a risk and we're like, please work out. And then other times we feel like it's very calculated and, that the downside is, if there's a downside, it's manageable. But whatever it is, it started from my dad saying, salary, benefits, health insurance, retirement, that's great. I'll see you later. I'm going to go, start my own. And that's what he did. And
wow.
So my education in the chocolate business, the first 20 years of my life, 100% from shadowing him and working with him. And, he was always so tight with managing cash flow and balancing that, because we are such a seasonal business. 60% of our business is in 3 months. And so to scale to that volume and build inventory with a handmade fresh product, it takes a discipline in accounting. And I have no finance or accounting degree, but now I run the bookkeeping side of the business and manage all of our finances as part of my daily task because of how I learned from my parents. And so, and it's, we move millions of dollars at a time but it's all in, just to getting a great family education.
Amazing. So growing up in that environment, so tell me about your sister's journey briefly. I'm curious. She was older.
She was older. She got in after me. She took the more professional route. We all helped out with the holidays. We liked doing it, but we didn't also have a choice. We had a choice, but the core, the Christmas week, we were all there. And but she, her and my brother, similar. He played a lot of sports, so he had a lot of extracurriculars in high school in the summer. My sister did a lot of extracurriculars in high school in the summer. So then she goes away to school out of town, actually gets a business degree, actually majors in accounting and finance, then comes back and starts to work for the business. So she has that very business left brain side of things. And like she can, quality check or proofread something and find the details of something where I like, if we're doing a catalog, I like to work with the photographer and the designer, make it look pretty, and she makes the prices, makes sure the prices and the copy is correct. So the combination of both of us make it execute, and so she took that approach and comes into the business and from that side. So very much on the administrative side, very much detail oriented, and so I think that's the kind of the secret sauce is between the three of us, my brother, sister, and I, do very different things and think and kind of approach the business in very different perspectives.
But she's still involved today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Maybe we should have brought her in for a guest 5 minutes, but do your best to answer for her. This is your chance, by the way. You can say anything you want. I won't stop you. So your big sister comes back, and did she talk about working for the corporation? It's interesting. One of the things that I've learned since going independent a second time in between big company stops and startups and such is that the really well-funded startup, I was involved with one startup that was very, very well-funded. It's a little big company, like it was 300 people. We hired quickly, and all of a sudden it acts big. And then I worked for companies with thousands of people in leadership. And so my question is, there seems to be something that happens when you work there that you feel like you just have to do what is being instructed. That the intense desire to please the ideal customer and client and the best and biggest clients, even if you're not customer facing, is just available, but no one does it. And to be entrepreneurial and say, there's plenty of people that say, I have a new big idea. But there's very few people that say, look, I have a new good idea, and here's how it's going to increase revenue, and here's how I'm going to cover the expenses it's going to cost, and it's going to be profitable, and you'll be able to spin it off as a division if you want. And it's a full entrepreneurial effort inside a corporation. So you don't have to leave a corporation if, sometimes it's the best thing to do, for sure. But I wonder if she had any reflections on the corporate life and going back to the family business and being more entrepreneurial. You ever hear her talk about that?
I think the business was very singular at one time. My dad had built a really good business, and it put us all through school, and it created a great life for the family. And it was the retail store. Well, it was two retail stores at the time with the Candy Kitchen. So we made the products that we sold in our two retail stores. She came in a couple years before me, and so I worked through summers in high school, and so I kind of got into the business first. So we're 3 years apart. So her 3 years of working was kind of continuing the core business in the beginning, but then when I got involved, I'm always the disruptor, and I always want to create something new. Like when Bissinger's became available to buy, I was like, let's disrupt, let's do it. The core business was doing great. It was growing double digits every year as that slow and steady growth. But I said, let's disrupt, let's get in, So in 2008, I wanted to go big into wholesale. And my dad's like, so we're going to make half as much, you cut your margin in half, and you have to, you have to sell it, and then it has to ship it, and you have to find and all of and wholesale is a make or break business. You get into it. If you get into that side of the business as a manufacturer, it either takes you to the next level or you go out of business. There's really no one that kind of dabbles in wholesale anymore. It's either all or nothing. Or if you do it, if you're a small company that has a bunch of retail stores, you might be in one or two wholesale accounts just for brand awareness, being the local grocery store. But typically beyond those, wholesale is a make or break point of the business. And so I was the one who was like, no, all of that. Everything you said makes sense, but let's do it. And luckily, I made that was the direction that worked really well. And I made a lot of those bold decisions that didn't work well, but I forget about those all the time. I have a short memory on mistakes. My brother reminds me all the time of my mistakes.
I bet he does.
He makes sure that I can fit through my door in my office all the time and get my head through. But and so she saw that, and it was exciting. Like every day, and especially now, we're doing this multi-million-dollar edition. We're looking at like 10 projects at one time. Every day coming into work, there was some spark that happened because we were, and it really, for the candy business used to be very conservative, where Mrs. Smith would come in on the 10th of December to buy her 4 1-pound boxes of milk caramels for her 4 gifts, like clockwork. And if you didn't see her on the 10th of December the following year, you should probably look in the papers. And that's how the business was. But then in the 2000s, it started to evolve. So something that had been the same for 50 years. People wanted new and innovation. And so my sister and I were at this opportunity where we said, like, let's do it. Let's create new products. Let's go into wholesale. Let's try to get into new markets. And so the wheel started spinning much faster. And then I think everybody in the family became more attracted to it. Because instead of coming in at 8 o'clock and doing this and then 8:30 doing this, it was every day was a different experience. And it's been like a wild ride startup concept since August of 2008.
Well, and I think this is a decent point to point out that if you're listening and you think they're just in a little kitchen making a few chocolates, you get one idea through the distribution discussion we just had that they're not that. But also like 7 production lines, multiple buildings and locations. It's been an interesting, even bumpy road to get to where you are. What are at least one of the big challenges that you faced leading a bunch of people making chocolate?
You know, there's 2 things that always come to mind. The team we have is amazing. The core team, and you know, even in 2008, 2010, as we had this amazing core team, and scaling is challenging because we don't have there's not a how to be a candy maker 101. Like if you're a baker, there's schools for bakers. If you're a teacher, there's a teaching degree. But we have to basically bring someone in and educate them and train them in our way. And we're the only candy factory in St. Louis. So scaling with really good talent is tough, number one. But as we continue to grow, and there's so many little check marks on our timeline, but in 2012, we made the big decision to move into this new facility, and it was, a major investment in construction. But then we felt pressure because 2011 we're debt free and small. 2012 it's multi-million-dollar investment, construction, increased overhead. Of course, paying the money back that we borrowed. So we needed to grow. We needed to grow at a faster pace, and so we were trying to grow with traveling more, going into national wholesale accounts, going into national trade shows. And there was a lot of bumps in the road. There's a lot of no's. You have to hear the word no so many times to get the one yes, and then it starts to get easier, and then product lines fail. But the big thing is to understand the data, why the product lines fail. I'm obsessed with data. I mean, and I think if you want to know one takeaway about me, I'm obsessed with data. I read every product review that comes out on the website. We publish a survey every year, and we get thousands of responses, and I just study them. The data to me is so important. I'm sure AI is going to be my best friend for all that to compile it but I try to look at the data. Why did this not work? When I sampled it, people liked it, but they didn't buy it. Well, what's that? So we studied that, and so we finally started to find things that worked, and then we tried to capitalize on that. Because if this box works, let's make more flavors in this box, or whatever it does. So obviously they like seasonal products. Let's get into seasonal. And as we did that, we were growing and growing and growing, and it was like, I always say it's like building a snowman. You start with this little snowball, and you just keep rolling it, and it's as long as there's snow and it keeps getting bigger. And then we found, we bought the one line, it was $100,000, and the next line was $200,000, and the next line was $400,000, and the next line after that you're in the millions, because you just keep going to the next size. And I said, yeah, I think it's time to jump to that. The $100,000 line did well. The $250,000 line has done well for us. The $400,000, and so I said we need the $1 million line. And then as we bought that, and it takes a year to build, we found some very high volume contract business that came to us that wanted to run on our lines. And so I tried to parlay them together. Here's the business, here's the machine, we have the facility, let's go. And we thought at the time that was, we've been doing all of this for the last 25, 30 years to get to this level. Like this is the best business. High volume. And I mean, it was 80 to 100,000 pieces a day, nonstop, filling truckloads of product, national distribution. But what came with it was extremely high auditing, extremely high quality control checks, extreme wear and tear on the factory, on the team, and the people. And what we were making, well, I don't want to say the word mass produced because it was high volume production, but it wasn't handmade artisan chocolates. There's no emotional connection to it. It was just someone, if I said, here's the machine, here's the building, here's the recipe, and I taught you how to go make it, you could do it. Where it's almost, I can't just explain how we do truffle production. It's an art, it's a science. And as we got into it, it seemed like morale suffered too, because we were just kind of making generic widgets, generic chocolate widgets, and it wasn't even for us; it was for someone else. So we
was it that you lost your story, your soul of its company, or was it that the work itself changed for everyone?
Yeah, I felt we were losing our soul, and I was so surprised because I just thought that the ultimate goal is to do the big national, big business. Truckload business is better than pallet business, and pallet business is better than local pickup business. And when I got to that level, I felt bored with it. I felt uninspired with it. It also consumed so much of my time, so I didn't get to innovate and create new products for our own brand. And also, it sounds crazy, and I heard Howard Schultz say this with Starbucks one time. We run very different sized businesses, so I'm not comparing myself to Howard Schultz, but he said when Starbucks stock was so high and money kept coming in so quickly, we just thought everything was perfect. But we didn't realize that we have flaws and we need to address those flaws. So it was one of those things when there's so much money was coming in from this contract work, we weren't paying attention to the other side of the business as much. And so we were starting to lose market share in our own brand. And then it got to the point where 60% of our volume, 70% of our volume was for other brands. And the whole dynamics of the company changed. But when I realized we didn't like that, I couldn't just turn it off. We spent over $1 million on this line. We had to pay that back. We had contracts in place with the customer. We had distribution agreements in place. And so we just kept plugging away. And then, believe it or not, when COVID came, the one major customer had to pause and shut down their business for 6 months. And then when they came back online, we just said, we're going to part ways. We're not going to do it anymore. So and that was a risk because, how do you turn away 7 figures of business and sleep at night? So
pay the debts down.
Yeah, you have to continue to pay the debt.
It's like going to medical school and borrowing to do your residency and all those things, and then getting to the end and saying, I think I just want to go work in a coffee shop. And
that was it. And I, it was a phenomenal lesson to learn because it forced me to, and my siblings and our team, to then innovate what we do now and create better products and make sure we're going out there to sell our product. And that was, if you look at sales on a chart, sales were growing, and then, they flattened out a little bit because of that change, and then they just exploded because we finally there was passion again in what we did. And to me, I have friends in the industry, they come by and they see us hand decorating one little truffle at a time. They think I'm crazy. And then I go to their place and I see these big machines just automatically creating their product. And it looks generic, so I think they're crazy. So this company is the way it is because the personality of my brother, sister, and I, who are obsessing over artisan small batch confections.
The craft.
The craft, yeah. And we all feel like I personally, when I go to a bar, I get a craft cocktail. I don't get a can of beer that's, I want someone to shake it and make it and spend time crafting. And that's how I approach the chocolate. My brother has the same appreciation for, food and restaurants and, everything. So I feel like the three of us combined, our passion for craft is what drove us back to where we're at today. And eventually where we found Bissinger's and why we thought Bissinger's is the perfect fit for us. And 6 years into it, we feel very, good, very good about that decision.
Interesting. So, you've made observations that can drive to principles, but what would you say your top 3 lessons were that you learned that are tools for anyone or for the future or for that difficult point?
I think that every business is different, but for me, in our business, that we have our hands on everything. Like, I don't know how we can do this remotely. 80% of my daily tasks can be done remotely, but being here at the factory, in the business, keeping an eye and overseeing everything. So I really think a hands-on approach is important for the business. Communication is the biggest. I mean, I feel like I spend most of my time bouncing from department to department. I go visit our retail stores. You had mentioned about, opening stores. I study our, store layouts and looking at new locations. I speak with our managers. I go to the quality department and I talk to them. I talk to my operations team in the morning. I talk to my engineering team. We're building a factory expansion right now, so I go check the job. I mean, the other day I was telling them they need to move outlets down 6 inches because of how we want, the layout. So every detail, to me, it's obsessive to, I talk to the catalog sales team. I want to see what the pulse is with our customers. I have a standing marketing call every week. And so communication to me is the ultimate. I don't know how, I feel like if I'm on the left side of the business, I don't know how the right side's doing. So I just always, if someone shadowed me for the day, I think they'd go crazy because I bounce around everywhere.
And the ultimate management by walking around.
Yes, lots of steps. But it's just about being present in the staff. And I just think the third principle, and I never understood this, because we just grew up this way, that if there's something if there's a spill on the floor, get a mop and just mop it up. And if you expect your team to clean, go clean with them. And if you expect your team to go, if you work late one night, stay with them. And so I never really understood that because my dad raised us that way. My parents, that's how we worked open to close. We unloaded trucks. We did everything. But then as we grew, and we were a staff of 5 people at the time, so the 5 people knew us very well. But as we went from 5 to 150, those 145 people didn't know that was our culture, and so they didn't understand that until they saw us do that. And I truly never understood the power of picking up a mop. I really just can't. I feel like that is a title for a book if I ever write one.
Well, call me back after this. I'll tell you how. It's there's some good shortcuts. So I was thinking back on the time when you were going through college and you could have left like your sister, and so why didn't you just go try something else entrepreneurial? Not
believe me, I
get
went
a
to
job.
school in Florida, and most of my friends in Florida stayed in Florida. It was tempting.
Yeah.
I wish I could answer that in a non-Disney fairy tale style answer, but there was nothing that would have stopped me from going into the business. I grew up in the chocolate business. I just have felt from day one that it was my destiny. You can go back to my mother's scrapbooks of me, and from first grade, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it says candy maker. I don't know why. This is not a tech startup AI business where you can make $1 billion with it. You have to be here every single day. You get about 4 days of vacation a year. You have to deal with engineering and human resources and people and every, extremely, crazy raw material issues. We're dealing with a chocolate crisis right now. Like, nothing about the business is, I would say, when it runs smooth, it's by accident because, chaos is normal for the chocolate industry, which is why I think what attracts me the most about it. But so that, and that's why the business is shrinking. It's really hard for people to get into the business in confectionery in general. But I just love it. I wouldn't do it any other way.
Tell us a little bit about the shortage and how you're dealing with that. It's interesting.
It's challenging. So I was asked that question about 6 months ago. They said, how do you feel about it? And I said, well, the short answer is since 2020, every day has been a new raw material crisis, whether there's been a shortage or a massive price increase. So we have become immune to these problems. But this is by far the biggest one we've ever seen. So for the majority of the last 10 to 15 years, chocolate as a commodity, the cocoa future has traded from about $2,200 to $2,800. Anytime, which was $2,800 a metric ton. So it's traded as a metric ton. Every time it hit 3,000, which was usually for a couple days at a time, it was like sounding the alarm, like, oh my gosh, chocolate's at a high. And then in January of 2024, it just creeped up to 4,000 all of a sudden. And everybody, what's going on? speculators started driving it up. The data coming out of West Africa, about 65% of the world's cocoa comes from Africa. So even though there's other places to grow cocoa, what we consume out of the Americas and Europe is getting the majority of its cocoa from Africa. A big part of the growing region like Vietnam, that usually stays in Asia. So even though 65% of the world's cocoa comes from West Africa, or like most of America's come from West Africa. So it's a really big deal for us. It creeped up above 4,000. We're not hearing, the commodity traders that we get reports from, we're not hearing much chatter. It's not like there's a big drought there or civil unrest. And so everybody's wondering what's going on. Had we known what was going to happen, because at that time we broke ground on a multi-million-dollar factory expansion, we would have taken all of the money to buy the new building, invested into cocoa futures. It hit 12,000, so then we could have sold and got 3 free factories. so we did not have a crystal ball to see this was coming, because we would have, had we known, it hit 12,000. It settled, then came down to 9. Today it's around 10,000, and contracts run about 12 months. So from 2024, we weren't seeing it as painful, but those contracts are gone, and so now we're buying it at a much higher, over double the price we were paying before. And I can't go out. There's always that bell curve that you play. So in your head. So say something's $5. Mm-hmm. Would you pay 6 for it? Probably. Would you pay 10 for it? I don't know. So I can't just go take a $5 item and charge 10. Now, to be fair though, manufacturing a chocolate bar has about 4 major pricing categories. You've got overhead, you've got labor, material cost, and then marketing cost. Marketing is big, because especially with retailers. Marketing didn't double. Labor has gone up, but it didn't double. Overhead has gone up, but it didn't double. So only 1/4 of that, but it didn't double, it tripled. So we don't need to double the retail price in order to sustain. But it's going up. Everything's going up. And it's not just us. I mean, it's just, I saw $4 chocolate bars at, Targets and Walmart that are now $5.99 and $6.99. So the big brands have taken effect. It's gotten extremely expensive. There's a lot of people changing ingredients and recipes and going to coatings and compounds or putting less chocolate or deleting. We will 100% not do that. So we still believe in a way that this is a short-term event. Who knows? Maybe it's not. So we're just passing, as if we have to do a price increase, we're doing it very slowly, and we're just passing the increase with no additional margin. So if that bar costs 45 cents more, we're going to charge 45 cents more.
Mm. Well, it's interesting. I don't know tons about chocolate. I've toured a couple of factories. I have a client that's a chocolatier. I don't know much about it, but because that's a new relationship, and I don't know why I think that all of it was coming from South America. Is any of it coming from South America?
So you can grow cocoa 10 degrees north or south of the equator. And so if you took a globe and just took a black Sharpie and just went 10 degrees north and all the way around 10 degrees south, that black Sharpie would mostly be in water. And the areas that it will cover is Africa, South America, and Vietnam. That's pretty much the big 3. So there's some, I think it's about 20% though. Mm. So it's a small. Now, my take on this is, why don't we as in the chocolate industry, not me, I'm a small fish here, why don't we just go invest in South America? It's closer. And why isn't someone taking 1 million acres of land and putting cocoa pods in it, and in 3 years the problem goes away? Easier said than done, right? But and quite frankly,
I'm sure no one cares about that land down there. I'm sure that they just welcome you in easily and maybe.
I always say, like, it's easier to look at things 10,000 feet in the air. But there is last summer, for example, we were at a national trade show, and everyone's coming to us, about customers are asking about chocolate, because this is the first time. It was in May. This is the first time things were really starting to get talked about, and the impact was happening. And so a lot of South American producers came to us and said, listen, we have plenty of beans. We have plenty of we love to send you samples. And so we thought, like, how great is this? Let's look into this. Let's do it. This was a great time to pivot as our supply chain. And if it truly is a problem coming out of West Africa, let's go to South America. The problem was the beans, because of the environment, because of the climate, because of that, that institutional knowledge that was not, didn't translate from the West African bean to South American bean. The product ended up tasting different. So all these levels of samples that were made for us, it was not the same product, and we just could not do that to our customer or ourselves. So we're paying the premium to continuously get our beans from West Africa, because that's the recipe, and that's what makes the Bissinger's chocolate and that chocolate taste the way it's supposed to be.
So you think it tastes you think it tastes better, not just different? Sounds like.
For sure. And I
That's
think that
fascinating.
I don't think it's a better quality bean or a lower quality bean. I think it's in the
bean.
technique.
Yeah.
And
That's
I always
what?
say, like, if I give you my caramel recipe and then I go make my caramel recipe, they're going to taste completely different. So it's in that artisanal style of crafting it. And I think they just have a much longer, generational knowledge of how to do it in the Côte d'Or in Ghana.
Fascinating. Wow. So all those bars I see in the high-end stores, high-end grocery stores, you see these bars, and there are invariably many that are promoting the South American bean, and it's just packaging and marketing, it sounds like, almost.
Well, no, I think those are really fun because the quality is an escalate, especially those really small batch, because they're doing their own roasting, fermentation, and grinding. But it's really fun, in my opinion, as a chocolate, someone that works in chocolate, lives in chocolate the whole time, is to go taste a chocolate bar that comes out of the Ivory Coast, and then go taste a chocolate bar that comes out of Ghana, and go taste a chocolate bar that comes out of, Brazil, for example, and you'll see that they're so different. And it's just like wine tasting and bourbon tasting. You may say, oh, wait a second, the one from Brazil tastes 10 times better. Dan's wrong. It tastes 10, and so, and I don't think there's no wrong, because the quality still is elevated. It's just it's all personal preference. And so to us, we couldn't match the Bissinger's profile out of South America. But it's not saying that those aren't of good quality. In fact, some of them are amazing quality.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Well, I have a friend that really dear to me. He used to work for me when we were kids, basically. We were first right out of college, and our first professional assignments, I was about 5 years into that, and he worked for me. He was an artist, and he created leather works. He'd go to Argentina and create leather and braid binders and purses, and he was amazing. And yet he was orchestrating all this, so he'd go and check it out and do all the things that you would imagine him doing. But he invited me, and now he's a clothier. Decades later, I run into him, and I became reacquainted, went down to his office, and he outfits the stars. And if someone's having a wedding, they're going to Tommaso. I'll give him a little pitch here. Tommaso Cardulo, and they're going to him to make their whatever $1,000 outfit. So I'm expecting to go down to his office and go deep into that. And of course, I bought a jacket from him, and actually my wife did for my birthday. It was expensive. It was worth it, and it looks terrific. And then he goes, "Hey, I want you to come to my event tomorrow night." And I said,
that's so
"Great.
Cool.
I'm not necessarily into clothes that much, but let's go." And he goes, "No. I'm doing a chocolate tasting. I am pitting the world's best 40 chocolates against each other at a high-end restaurant down here, and I want you to come." And he whispers to me at the break of the chocolate tasting, "I don't even like chocolate, but my wife loves chocolate." And so, of course, he's doing chocolate tasting because his wife loves chocolate. But it was so clever. They had this bingo-like matrix chart that they put everything on, and then you give your own paper or you grade everything, and they grade it in different ways. And he's in this amazing, speak of Louis XIV looking outfit, testing chocolate with everyone. Chocolate is just a really fun thing to be involved with. I think it's so good.
I think the parallels between chocolate, wine, and spirits, really bourbon, because that's probably the one spirit with the most flavor profile. It's just it's so much fun. I mean, part of our expansion, we're doing a new cafe. We're going to build a speakeasy bar, and then have an event room where we can actually do curated tastings and bring those two together, because there's not a lot of other crafts that you can do that. And what's interesting about Bissinger's and at Chocolate is we rarely just sell chocolate. People rarely, even though, you know, we've been doing it for a long time and the recipes go back, you know, hundreds of years, it's really the confections. You know, people say, oh my gosh, Bissinger's English almond toffee, or their truffles, or their caramels, and so it's the marriage between those two together that we're mostly known for.
Yeah.
In fact, our milk chocolate bar is our lowest selling bar.
I'm not going to tell you what kind of chocolate I like best. It'll.
No, I'd love to hear it.
No, it's not even chocolate. It's white. But I get teased by every single human that knows me that my favorite chocolate is not chocolate. But, you know, they put a little shavings from the outer part of the shell in there somewhere, so that, you know, you get some cocoa in there. But, you know, it's interesting. I do like milk, too. I'm the wrong guy to pitch the dark, but I love chocolate, as you can tell. But I was going to ask you, you know, you're getting through these challenges. You've got back on the right path that you wanted to be on. Your story's back, your soul's back as a company. You're doing some really exciting things. And then you look at your personal career and you have internal thoughts that no one else gets to hear. We want to hear those internal thoughts. We want you to be a little vulnerable and share. How do you feel success and more success now that you've been through this?
You know, I wish I could answer that question myself. Everybody has that, you know, there was one thing we never do is we never disclose sales, but, you know, as we know our sales numbers, there was this, you know, there's like a number we were trying to hit at one time. It was just a big round number. And we just thought that would be, if we hit that, that's the ultimate. And then we do that. And then okay, well, what happens if we, you know, 50% above that? And we did that. And so I always say we just continuously keep moving the goalpost. And so I don't know what is going to finally scratch that itch of me to be truly feel that we made it in the world in chocolate. Personally, you know, I look at like, I think everyone has their connection, whether it's salary or whatever, you know, whatever. But I just feel like our job, crafted products, like, we're never going to have a Super Bowl ad. We're never going to have this massive marketing program. So growth is, a lot of it's organically, a lot of it's word of mouth, and, you know, and so as someone comes to know our brand and appreciate that, it's because of the quality and nature of the product. You know, if you appreciate Bissinger's, it's because you bought it and you enjoyed it, or someone told you about it because they enjoyed it. So I just feel like I'm looking at brand awareness as a metric of success only because we're not pushing money into it. We're letting the product build the brand, if that makes sense.
Interesting. Yeah, well, and you probably wander about where people have some chocolates and notice faces when they take their first bite. Got to be doing that once in a while, don't you?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I you know, someone the other day in Florida was telling me, she says, I asked someone if they've heard of Bissinger's, and they said no. She goes, sorry to let you know. I go, it doesn't bother me. It just means we have more opportunity. You know, we haven't saturated.
And they're missing out.
Yeah, they're missing out. I said it means we have, so we haven't scratched the surface yet. So I just feel like there's so much runway to do. You know, personally, I have a lot of rules personally. I have 3 kids under 6. You know, happy wife, happy kids, and so I leave the office at 5 o'clock every day, almost no matter what. And if we need to be here for 15 hours straight, we still leave the office at 5 o'clock. That means we just get here at 3 in the morning, and that's what we'll do. So I really try to make sure, like, it's so tough for me to not go see my wife and kids. Like, you know, if I get home at 7 or 8, then they'd all be sleeping by then. So I really try to balance things personally with that. I rarely try to work on Saturdays anymore. I used to come in every Saturday, and I have no problem getting here really early. I wake up early, but I just try to balance that as much as I can.
Now that is a cool rule. I have never heard.
Yeah, it's
Family
our
is
5
so
o'clock
important. What?
Yeah, it's the 5 o'clock exit, and it's like a core thing here.
Whatever the time is for an individual, your cushion is early in the morning to get more. And wow, that's a great thing. That's a great thing. Wow, congratulations. Okay, I want to end with some discussion from you to my audience. So there's some people that are 30 years old, 25 years old even, that are just starting out in work. They have some job. They don't even know at this point, like any of us did really, what's going to be entailed in a career and creating a life's work that you love and help others and gain fulfillment and make some money to pay the bills. What 3 to 5 things do you think they could do this week to put themselves on a path where they have an amazing livelihood?
I really believe that I have things just come to me now, because I'm always in this creative process thinking, like new products or new ideas come to me at the most random times ever, and I just try to write them down. But I think that all the stars are aligned in my head because I absolutely love every minute of this job and love what I do. So if you don't love what you do, if you're like, I feel like so many people now get into a career path for the money or because they think it's an accelerated. But if you don't love it, you're going to waste 10 years of your life or whatever it takes for you to realize it. So I think the big thing is make sure your heart and head are aligned. Number one, I have been so lucky, at the top, there's always this phrase that you're lonely at the top. And I've been so lucky that I have my brother, sister, and I to really kind of balance that. So we collaborate on everything, and we make a lot of big decisions together. Because as the bigger you get, the bigger decisions can be very, if you're really small, you make a small decision, it can impact just you. And then if you make the wrong decision, it just affects you. But we make decisions now that can impact a whole company, a lot of people, and you have to be, those could be very, the risk level goes up, so there's a lot of pressure. So I think you have to really make sure that you can align, have an outlet too, like the pressure that comes into growth, whatever it is, if it's playing tennis or playing golf or going out, but just making sure you can keep your mind clear and find whatever that medium is. And then I just think being hands-on as much as you can. I don't think people today have as much respect for the boss in the corner office if they're just sitting in the corner office all day, or if they're jet setting the world or trying to run the business remotely. So I try to be as hands-on as I can with the entire business. Probably too much. I probably am everywhere at all times. And then really start to, we don't, as we grow and create a new position, we try to mentor somebody. If we give someone a director position, we try to respect that. So, and we try to mentor them in the right direction. So you have to really work on building your team, because you can't do everything. And that's the toughest lesson to learn, I think.
Yeah, nor should you. Yeah, well, that's beautiful. Dan Abel Jr., the steward of King Louis XIV's Chocolatier. That's so great. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you being on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us to get leaders unstuck and thriving with their teams. You've heard a little bit about the power of bold encounters and leadership. Watch on. Go to full episodes with the iconic expert interviews at markspencercook.com/podcast. And please subscribe. My site takes you directly to YouTube video and podcast versions. Please make comments. Share this with your friends. Also, reach out to us to just brainstorm your priorities, challenges, events, or how bold encounters might help. Visit windfallpartners.com. Click the Let's Talk button without obligation and reach out. I look forward to speaking. Thank you for joining us. Now, let's lead with bold encounters today.